Hello, everyone. Good morning. A very good morning to you. Now, today we are here again for another section of the class. Last class, we were able to get introduced to CSS3, and we were able to look at how to style anchors and how to link pages together, how to link to external websites, and how to style anchors using the LVHA pattern, whereby we say L means link, V means visited, H means hover, and A means active. Well, you could go back to the past manual, you could go back to the last video, and you'll find out more about what we did in the last class. So today we are going to be going much deeper into CSS3. Today's class is very much focused on CSS3 and just a little bit of HTML. So today we're going to be going much deeper into CSS3. Great. So now, first of all, before we start looking at CSS3, it's very important that we take for one thing first. One, I said something. Before launching into CSS3 styling, every web engineer must structure local server projects correctly in XAMPP. Standardized file organization prevents broken resource paths and ensures high deployment compatibility across web servers. Okay? Yes, that's what we're saying here. We say that standardized every web engineer. Now you must understand that the way you structure, if you are using XAMPP, the way you structure your website in your XAMPP is actually going to be basically the same thing with what is going to be, how it is going to be on the internet when you go to a live server, with just little slight differences. But the truth of the matter is that the same way you structure it is also how you are going to structure it then. And that's why it is important that you arrange your files and folders properly. And also, not just that, even for the purpose of maintenance, as a web engineer, or as a web developer, as a web designer, or a UX or UI person, you must understand that as a web engineer, it is important that as much as possible, it is very important that as much as possible you structure you arrange your pages, your website in such a way that it will be easy for you to come back to later. Now, in the past, I've had an experience whereby I built a site. The site has already been on the internet for close to 8 years, and 8 years later, the owner of that site was calling me to make changes. Without proper directory structure, no, you will not be able to truly be able to make proper changes. Proper change is faster. You'll begin to find it difficult, even though you were the one who wrote the initial code, you'll begin to find it difficult to check where things are because of the fact that you didn't structure your website properly. And that's why, first of all, before we jump into writing into CSS3, the first thing we want to do is to look at how do we structure our folders properly. In our first class, we already guided you to install XAMPP, to install Notepad++, and also to install VS Code. We did that in the first class, so I believe everyone should have XAMPP already installed. So I wouldn't be going back to how to install XAMPP or how to install VS Code or Notepad++. If you didn't, please go back to the very first class, Introduction to HTML and the Web, and go and go and play that video, and you'll be able to see how to set up your system to contain all of this, to have XAMPP, to have all the tools we need to start at our web development and web design journey. Okay, yeah. Now, but also very important, you must take note of this. We said crucial web server architecture standard. Web servers Aperture, NGINX, and IIS, yeah, are globally configured by default to automatically search for an index.html or index.php file when a browser accesses a directory, a URL, e.g., localhost/my project. Always name your primary landing page index.html. Now, at this particular level, okay, you are only working with HTML. You have not yet started making use of things like, maybe you have not begun to make use of certain things like PHP and some other things. You are just still working on pure HTML. You haven't gone to the back end. But so for this level, it is always advised that your primary landing page, that is what we call the home page. Like when you go to a website like this, let us say www. Which website do I go to now? Okay, let's say you go to this website like this, ideacore.com. Okay, if you go to this website, yeah, this is known as the landing page. This is your primary landing page. This is where visitors go to when they type your address or the URL of your website. Yes, this is where visitors land at, and this page should be called index.html. So any page you are going to use as the first page of your website should be referred to as what? Index.html at this particular level. And consequently, as you progress in this journey, you may begin to name that index.asp, index.php, and index of a lot of other programming languages that exist out there. But for now, your first page should be called index.what? HTML. Okay, now how do we create a folder? So now the first things first, open your Windows Explorer. Okay, now when you open your Windows Explorer, you go straight to local disk C. Okay, local disk is always called C in your Windows operating system. I don't know what Mac calls it, but I think it's about the same thing. Now when you do that, you go to XAMPP. This is your XAMPP folder where your XAMPP was installed. Now you see a lot of folders inside XAMPP, but these folders are not your business. Go to this folder called htdocs. Now in your case, you may not have anything here. Okay, you may not have any single thing there, and if you even have anything there that is not grouped into folders here, just delete everything in that place. Maybe you just had a fresh installation and you have the default XAMPP page loaded there. Please delete and wipe everything inside this particular folder and have a clean slate to avoid confusion. Then now you create a new folder for your project. Now for today's class, I'm going to call it class 2. So I'll create a new folder called class 2. Okay, yeah, you create a folder for your project. Now this class 2, if I were building a website for maybe an NGO called Feed the Nation, this folder I may call it Feed the Nation. If I was building for a company called Topaz ICT Development Solutions, I could also call it Topaz IT. I can give the folder a name, but usually what I do here is that, like you can see a project here, Bantu Travels. This is a project I worked on for one of my friends. This is another project, Jeremy SRVs. This is also another project I worked on for one of my very good friends also. So now when you create a folder, it's always good at this point to create a folder that carries the name of your project. This is because so that tomorrow when you are coming back, because a time will come, if you become very active in this industry, you become active in this industry and a lot of people know you, and people know you very, very, very well in the industry, you will see that you can have up to 10, 15, 30 projects here. This is a new system. This is actually a bare bones system. If I opened my old system, if you see the number of projects I have here, you will even be very surprised. Are you getting me? So that is the reason why it is that way. So it's always advisable that you name the first folder here according to the name of your project, and try to not have spaces among the name. Rather, instead of using spaces, you can see what I did here. I use a hyphen to demarcate words together. This will favor you more and this will help you better. So that we call this what? Class 2. Now inside this folder, which is the project folder for today, I'm going to create a new folder called what? CSS. Now CSS, because we're going to be dealing so much on CSS in question here, this folder is where we are going to store all our CSS code, all our CSS files. Now I want you to know, though at this level we are only using one style sheet to control the entire website, but there are situations whereby you may need more than one style sheet to control the entire website. Like when you're using frameworks like Bootstrap, Foundation, etc., they will also require you to integrate their style sheet. Just make sure you copy those style sheets into the CSS folder, and also create your own custom style sheet in the CSS folder. We're coming to that stage, but first of all, create your CSS folder. Next, I'm going to create my JS folder. Now remember, I taught us in the beginning, I said that HTML is for the structure of your website or your web page. It brings out the structure, the looks. For a house, the HTML can be looked at as the laying of the blocks. Are we together? Yeah, the laying of the blocks. HTML can be looked at that way. Yeah, the laying of the blocks. While CSS can be looked at the plastering, the painting, to make the house look beautiful. JavaScript can be looked at the electrical wiring, the plumbing work, all of this, and that's why we say JavaScript adds behavior and interactivity to a website. Just the way electricity, plumbing, and all of that helps to make a website, a house, much more interactive, much more able to respond to the end user. And so that is why you have the JS folder. Inside this JS folder, you have all your JavaScript files loaded inside them, so you can integrate them into whatever it is that you are working on. Now when you have that, as you can see, we have that. Then we also have a folder called what? Images. Yes, this is a very important folder also. It's good you have a folder called images, and the purpose of having this image folder is that there are certain assets you are going to have, like logo of the website. There are some pictures you will use on certain aspects of the website that you can load in this images folder, and it will be easy for you to call them at the appropriate pages. So you create a new folder here, and we're going to call it images. I personally like to use IMGs, but For the purpose of this class, to not confuse anyone, let's call it images directly like this. Now that's for that. Now you have created all the folders you need to create. You can close this now and then open up your notepad plus plus. You can see the structure here. We have created CSS folder. We need to create all these files too. Okay, so just open your notepad plus plus. Notepad plus plus. Like I said, I don't encourage the usage of VS Code at the early stages of learning HTML and CSS, so you can get used to your keyboard and know your code and help your typing speed. It helps your typing speed a lot when you use Notepad plus plus. Because Notepad plus plus does not get to correct your errors or complete code for you. It doesn't work like an IDE. It doesn't work like an IDE per se. It requires you literally to have coding each and every single thing that you are going to need to make use of in your code. So now this our Notepad plus plus is opened. First things first, I'm going to create style.css. Okay, so I'm going to go to here, go to that folder that I created. You see this XAMPP. We open XAMPP and go to htdocs, and then this class 2. You can see the folder we created, and inside here I called it style.css. Styles, or what did we call it in our manual? Let's see, style.css. Yes, style.css. So you just call it style and then come here and select save as type, and we're going to scroll down and you see it's cascading style sheets. Yeah, CSS is an acronym like we already know for cascading style sheets, and then you save. Okay, this is where we're going to have all our CSS declarations and what have our CSS declarations and notifications in. Then in the client side JavaScript, we have a JS folder. We're going to create another file called scripts.js. Yes, scripts.js. You can close this since we're not working on it yet, and then say file, save as. Okay, or just file, save as, and then come to class 2, come to JS, and then say scripts.js. Okay, JavaScript file scripts.js. You have it there, and good, it stays there. Now we have created those two files. Now remember, we have two other files there, index.html and about.html. These other files outside there, these are files that are going to be parts. I put together. These files are going to be the files that make up your website. Your index.html, about.html, our product.html. You know, all of these things. These are files that are going to make up. They are going to carry the real information about your website, the real details of your website. That is what they are going to carry. So we're going to create those ones now, and you can see we are not creating those ones inside a subfolder. We are going to be creating them directly inside the class 2 folder. Inside class 2 folder here, like we said, I'm so sorry, I have a cold. Like we said, the first page that your website, that web servers look for, is the page called what? Index. That is the first page that every website looks for, every web server looks for. So it's important we create our first page, we name it what? Index. And you see we are saving it in the class 2 folder directly as index.html. So you scroll down here, you see it, hypertext markup language. You scroll down here and you have it there. Okay, and then you now have about.html. This is the second page. Yeah, we'll also create the same folder at the same level. Oh God, this one I want to. We also create the same folder at the same level at where our index.html page is. And for us to create that, you just go here, just work. You just create another file, new. Okay, file, save as. Okay, and we call this one about. I am very fond of using small letters to name my files when coding. Yeah, I'm not saying it is compulsory or it's a law, but personally I find it easier and better to use small letters to name my files whenever I am writing code. Now when you have done this, you have gotten, now when you look at our directory again now, if you look at our XAMPP directory where we created this project, you are going to see what we have created now, what we have done so far. You're going to see what we have just done. Of course, for a standard simple website that you can build at your level right now, this is a standard folder structure. You have your CSS. You see, if you open the CSS folder, you have your style.css there. You open your images folder. This is where we put our logo as image assets, maybe other images that we're going to use on the website. This is where we'll store them when we get to that stage. This is the JS folder. You can see we have our script.js here. That script.js we created in Notepad++. And of course, in the main folder, we have our index.html, which is the first page of the website, and we have our about.html, which is like the secondary page of the website. Now, this is a very standard way, and this is for the whole purpose of my classes of this course. As long as we are concerned with website design, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I advise and recommend that you maintain this exact folder structure. Yes, I advise and recommend that you maintain this exact folder structure. Why? This is a globally acceptable folder structure. You can see it here. This manual will also be made available to you via a link to download as you also watch the video. You can see this structure. This is a globally accepted standard and structure for building for structuring web pages in a website. Then when we are doing more advanced pages here, we may create other folders that carry some other things. But basically, for a standard simple website that just needs to make use of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, this is a standard folder structure. So it is important you maintain this for every project and that we are going to be working on all through this class. Now, the first things first is now it's not just about creating all of these things all together. We also have to now also link the external style sheet. Now, I will tell you, there are three ways of linking style of using CSS in HTML. But the most recommended one is the use of external style sheet, and that's because that applies the principle of modular programming, whereby we call it separation of concerns, whereby we have every programming language that will be used in a project, because you can hardly build any software with a single programming language without the use of external programming languages, especially websites. Websites cannot be built with just one programming language. You must use at least two. Let's say you don't use JavaScript at all, but at least HTML and CSS must be involved. And so because of that now, it is important that when you build that, we need to also understand how do you link an external style sheet. Now we have inline styles, we have page styles, which I explained in the last class. We won't be dwelling on that, but it is better to use an external style sheet. This is the most recommended way. Whether the website you are building has only 1 page, 200 pages, 50 pages. Why? Because every change you make in the external style sheet reflects on all the pages of your website. Like we already established that a website is a collection of related web pages. And a website can run into lots and lots of pages. Are we together? And if it can run into lots and lots of pages, it is very important and imperative that you help yourself in case of future maintenance. So now, if you finish building a website and the owner say maybe he doesn't like the design, he doesn't like the look of the site, you can easily just manipulate. You can just go straight to the CSS and change the colors and do the modifications that he needs without you having to enter each HTML file one after the other. That will be very time consuming and absolutely very, very unnecessary. So I would advise you that you do that. So how do you link an external style sheet? Now, remember we created our index.html in Notepad++. You can see the file open here, index.html. Now, all my codes are inside the manual, so I'm going to copy the code here, copy the HTML, and paste it inside the index.html. Now, what do we have here? Now, the first thing you have here is doc-type HTML. Like I told you, doc-type HTML is like a letter of introduction. Like when someone is sending you somewhere and gives you a letter telling you to take this to introduce yourself to a place so that you can be given a listening ear. So this particular declaration up here in HTML, you must have it for your HTML or your web pages before. Yes, all your web pages should have it. You must have it for your web page. You take this declaration. This declaration introduces the document to the browser as a HTML document that is following the HTML5 standard. And of course, we have the HTML lang equal to English. Not very compulsory that you put it. The HTML you must put it, but the lang equal to EN is not compulsory. But it is just better and imperative that you do that, just to follow the W3C standard. Yes. So HTML lang equal to EN, you are just trying to say this document, all the text in this document are going to be in English language. It's a style of introduction also. So, it helps search engines also when they are crawling your website. A content in an English website it may not be useless to a Frenchman, but a Frenchman who does not understand English, even if he needs the content, he doesn't understand it. So search engines try their best. That's Google, Yahoo, and Bing, which are the three most popular search engines. They always try their best to give people do regional targeting, regional ranking of pages. So a page is going to be ranked. So with this introduction, and they know very well that they should rank you for your content high in English speaking countries. Don't worry, as you follow us on this YouTube channel, we're going to have a very extensive course on digital marketing. We'll learn more about searching optimization, all of that. But for now, we're still dealing with programming. Okay. Yeah, so this is like saying that the language that this software is going to be that the document in this software, the language to be written in is English, and every text here is going to be in English language. You have to put that, and then of course you open the head section. Like I told you, our in HTML, every HTML page is divided into two sections: the head section and the body section. And I say the head section contains those things that don't appear on your website, on your web page, but can influence the whole web page. While the body section contains those things that will actually appear on your web page. Now, in the head section of my HTML document, here we have the head section. Now, the only tag in the head section that appears on your web page is the title tag. But then we have all these other tags that will influence the overall of your web page, but they won't influence. They won't be able to appear on your web page. Now, the first thing is the meta tag, meta chart set equal to UTF. Every time you hear the word meta is talking about text information inside a multimedia content that can only make sense to a computer. Yes, that can only make sense to what? A computer. Meta information does not make sense to human beings. So that is why meta information is not meant to be read by human beings. Rather, it is meant to be read by what? The computer. For example, if you take a picture, there are certain softwares you can use to work on that picture, and we could find the location where that picture was taken, the kind of device that picture was taken in, etc. Even if it's an AI generated image, how do you know that? How is it that when you upload image, when you create an AI image and upload it on Facebook, on Instagram, and all of these places, you see them tell you AI info? Are you getting me? How do they know that? That's the meta tag. What's happening there? With the help of meta information provides extra information to multimedia content or mixed content that are only useful to the computer and are not useful to the end user. Okay, so now meta tag is equal to UTF-8 tells the HTML parser of Google Chrome, or of Edge, of Safari, of Internet Explorer, that the programming of this software will be using the UTF-8 encoding. Yes, we have various encodings, but the most popular and most used encoding is the UTF-8 what? Encoding. They are all part of the American Standard Code for Information Interchange. Yes. Then we have the meta name equal to viewports. I already explained. I say for your website to look good on mobile, to be able to adjust properly on mobile devices and various kind of devices, you need to make use of this. These two tags are the most important tags in your head section. You can actually do your website without having a title tag, but that's not advisable. But then these two tags are the most important tags. Yes, especially this meta name equal to viewport. That is this second line, this very tag. This makes your website optimized for mobile. And the title tag, this brings about the title. This is going to appear in the browser address bar. Like you can see what is appearing here. That is exactly what it is. That is what is going to appear in that very place. Then, for the purpose of why we created this, look at this. This is where we link our style sheet, external style sheet. Remember that we created a folder called CSS. If you can look at our folder structure once more, okay. Look at our folder structure once more. Let's take a look. Okay. Look at our folder structure once more. You see CSS, and we created a folder called CSS, and inside CSS we have style.css. Perfect. So this is how we link this. And so we say link REL. REL stands for relationship. Yes, the link tag can be used for multiple things. Now, if you want to have a fav icon, you also use the link tag, and there are other things you can still use the link tag to, but those are much more advanced levels. Let's not disturb ourselves with that. Rather, we now say link REL equal to what? Style sheet. That's link relationship style sheet. And we say hyperlink reference equal to CSS slash style.css. We are linking to that CSS file that we created in the CSS folder known as style.css. And then we now come to the body section. In the body section, we don't have much content there yet. We just have welcome to CSS3 what? Mastery. Now this is how you manage. Are you getting me? This is how you manage. This is how you manage to structure your web page, your website, and it will be easy for you to handle and manipulate later. Now let's go into the topic of the day, the first topic of the day, and we're going to be looking at introduction to CSS3. Now we say CSS3 or cascading style sheets level 3 introduces modular features, programmatic functions, robust selection mechanisms, and layout control systems. Below is a concise practical breakdown of core CSS3 mechanisms. Now, what we are saying is that now CSS has gone through 3 variations: the CSS1, followed by the CSS 2.0, and then the CSS3, which is what we are using currently. CSS3, there is no plan of replacing that standard. Yes, yeah. When you say a programming language have gone through evolution, this is an example of a programming language going through evolution. Yes. Now, the CSS3 is what is happening in CSS3 here is that what is happening here is that we're just saying that CSS3 introduced a couple of things that were not existing in past ones like CSS 1.0, CSS 2.0, and CSS what? And CSS 2.5 and the rest of the other CSS versions. And we said one, introducing modular features. What are modular features? Whenever you hear the word modular in program, we're talking about ability to break down a problem into smaller units known as what? Modules. We're trying to say that CSS3 was able to bring about modular features in the sense that it was able to break up web pages into multiple parts and allowing you to be able to style those pages, those sections, those parts modularly, that you can deal with each part as a separate what? Entity. Yeah. And it also introduced programmatic functions, ability to make use of functions. Yes, CSS3 was actually not really classified as a programming language when it first came in. Same thing with HTML, but with the help of these introductions and things in HTML5, you can now classify them as real programming languages. Now CSS3 has support for variables, has support for functions, okay, has support for a couple of things, and has a very robust selection mechanism. You are going to know more about selection as we progress in this class. Now, what are some of the modern CSS3 functions? What are some of these functions that were introduced in CSS3 which were not previously available in CSS2, in CSS1, and CSS2? What are they? We have CSS3 introduces native functional expressions for dynamic calculations, variable handling, and fluid bounding what? Ranges. Now, the first one we say VARO in brackets custom properties assesses what? CSS custom what? Properties. What do we mean by that? Yes, assess CSS custom properties. These are properties like when you want to skim a page. Yes, you are hired to build a website, and the person tells you this is how I want my website to be. I want my website to have a white and blue color scheme. Those kind of things. When you want to define, when we talk of variables, variables are talking about things that you can define and make use of at a later time in your code. So the first thing is var in bracket custom property assesses custom what? Properties. This is the ability to declare variables in CSS that, and whenever these variables are referenced in any part of your code, automatically those things that reference them will be styled according to the declarations you made for that variable. You will see more of this as we progress. And then we have calc in bracket expression executes dynamic mathematical calculation, e.g. mixing percentage and pixel units. Yes, this function that came in CSS3 has the ability to execute dynamic. CSS3 had no capacity to do mathematical calculations before in the past, and it was very necessary because sometimes you need to achieve certain kind of things, especially in the area of styling. Yeah, certain things that may require you, like we say, example, mixing percentage and pixel units. You may want to combine the power of percentage and pixel units to get a particular color scheme or feel. Yeah, these are things that you may hardly use, but it's also important that you know them. Yes, so the purpose of calc function is to enable a user. Are you getting me? Calc function enables a user to do some certain calculation, especially when it comes to handling size of element of things in your HTML document. That's the purpose of the calc calculation. Then we have the min val 1, 2 and max val 2. Chooses the smallest and largest value what? Dynamically. Yes, the min function in CSS allows for you to choose the smallest and largest value dynamically based on where it is per time. And then we have the clamp min and prefer restricts a font or dimension between a lower and upper bound. Yes, clamp restricts a font. That means it creates a kind of ceiling. Yes, maybe you said, okay, this font, the lower bound of this font is maybe 30 pixel, and then the highest bound it can go is 100 pixels. So what clamp does basically is that it is going to say, well, if no matter how big the screen is, as the screen is big, it will never be less than that particular font size will never be less than 30, and it will never go above 100. No matter the screen it finds itself, even if you bring a 79 inches monitor and open the website there, it will still not go beyond that particular size. That's the job of clamp. So clamp creates a ceiling or a restriction on a particular word, on a to restrict a font or dimension. That is, it's written both font size and dimension. When we talk of dimensions or talk of width and height, it is just used to create a ceiling to the width and height of elements in HTML, of HTML elements. And then we now have what we call the linear gradient and radial gradient. Generates resolution independent color transitions. Yes, with some it was not possible before to mix two colors in one single location in CSS. Yes, it wasn't possible. Then when CSS3 came, the gradient function came into play. And we have the linear gradient and we have the radial gradient. Like if you have used photo softwares like Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, some of these graphic design softwares in the past, you will see how linear gradient goes on a straight line, while radial gradient, forms a form of circle and comes from inside out. Okay, that's for that. Now we advise that you copy this code. Let's copy this code to our CSS file. Now remember, we have a file called, we created a file called style.css in our CSS folder. So you open CSS, open style.css, and you paste it. This is just to show us a bit. Now this is an example. Ratio root. This root is talking about everything about your web page. Are you getting me? Root is this is just a practice of, we just showed some of the functions. Okay, if this will not do anything now, but as soon as we start coding, as soon as we start practicalizing fully, you will be able to see that this will be able to achieve, you will see what this has done. But basically this page has basically been skimmed. Yes, now you can see what happens here. Background linear gradient. With the help of linear gradient, we are able to say 135 degree, and that's the degree of the gradient. We have 180 degrees for a complete straight line, so 135 degree, and then we gave it a color, and then we came here and say it is var, primary what color, and then we have color, that's for background. Then we have color as FFF, that's white, and then we have width calc 100% minus 40 pixel. That means for when you calculate the width of a particular element, you do 100, you calculate 100, you get 100% of the width and remove 40 pixel out of it. Dynamically calculate width taking padding into what account. That's what this does. Margin 0 over and auto. All these are just, we're just trying to explain to you some of the functions and methods that are available. It says actually this will not make sense to you now until we fully start practicing. But then let's look at some things here. Good. Now, selector types, class. Now, how do you select HTML element? Now, we say that the purpose of CSS is to style HTML documents, give HTML presentation, give HTML beauty. That is the whole job of CSS. That's what we said. So now, the question now comes now, how do we now select these HTML elements? What are the ways that HTML elements can actually be selected in CSS and they will be used and they can be worked on and manipulated? So we're going to be looking at selector types, classes, IDs, and nested what? Structures. Selectors enable targeted application of styling rules across the DOM tree. Yes, what selectors do is it allows CSS to be able to target specific elements or group of elements across the whole HTML document to apply a particular style to. Now, the first one is what we call the universal selector. That is the asterisk. It applies, any style that you apply to the universal selector will be applied across the entire web page. Yes, that's why we call it the universal what selector. There is something strange about programming. You find out that, do you know that in programming generally most of the time the star, the asterisk sign is seen as they are selecting all. It is used to select all in most of the programming languages. Yes, that's how it was. So universal selector will have the asterisk. It applies to every DOM element. When you hear the word DOM stands. When you hear the word DOM stands for document object model. And what is document object model? Document object model is talking about your HTML document. That's the HTML document being viewed at that moment in your browser. Okay, that's the universal what selector. So any style that you apply to the universal selector, that's the way the asterisk will apply to every element of the DOM, every element of every DOM element in that particular HTML document where that style sheet is referenced. Okay, don't worry, we're going to be practicing some of this and you understand better, but it's good I explain all of this now so that when we start practicing you'll be able to understand better what we are doing. Then we have the element selector. Element selector will say h1.p targets all instances of an HTML tag. Are we together? Target all instances of an HTML what tag. So now h1 comma p, when you use the name of the tag added to your style sheet, are you getting me? Added to your style, when you use the name of that, like if you look over here, in this our first example, you can see we have something like .0 header. You see this, imagine if it's your tag that is here and you put this, you put your curly braces and declare the styles that you want in here. Okay, now what we are just saying here, basically the element selector, when you want to target a particular HTML element. Now if you apply a style to h1, for instance, now every h1 element in the entire document object model is going to be carrying that particular style. Maybe you declare the font for all the h1 element, for all the paragraph element to maybe be Times New Roman 12 pixel, okay, or 12 REM Times New Roman. If that is what you did, that if you use the element selector, it means that every paragraph that appears on that document, every single paragraph p tag that appears on that particular HTML document, it's going to carry that exact same style. It will target all instances of a particular HTML tag. Then we have the class selector. What is the class selector? Like I told us in the last class, I didn't go deep, but then I spoke about IDs and classes. Now, what are classes? Reusable identifier can be used multiple times per page. Now, class selector is when you want to group a number of elements together. Are you getting me? And be able to style them together. Yes, that is what a class selector does. And you can see for it to be selected, you made use of the dot notation and then the name of the class. We're going to look at see all of that as we progress in what we are doing. Okay, that's the class selector. Then we have the ID selector. Now we say the class selector is what? A reusable identifier, and be used multiple times per page. Yes, HTML allows you to use the class, so the class attribute multiple times per page. Yes, on most of the elements. The ID selector, we say Ashmin now, for instance, unique identifier must appear only once per HTML document. Now, the purpose of this ID selector basically only appears once. You only use ID once on a HTML page. Yes, like there may be a specific element you want to just target and give a special kind of feel or look. Maybe it's a paragraph and there's an element you just want to target, a text you want to target and highlight because you want to draw the user's attention. There, an ID will make sense to use. And in your CSS, you refer to the ID using the hashtag style. You know, not just hashtag. You don't use hashtag on only Twitter, Instagram, and the rest of that. You can also use hashtags in HTML and CSS. So when you declare an ID for an HTML element, you use the hash main-nav, use the hash to access that ID, and then you can style accordingly. Okay, now we have the attribute selector. This targets elements, we target element by attributes of value what matches. Now look at an example. Now if you create a, if we get by next class, by our next two next class, let me just call it next class. Okay, we're going to be looking at forms and then you understand what this is. But in this case now, you target attributes, target elements by attributes or what value matches. We already know, we have established in the last class that that attributes are just parts of the extra properties that you add to a specific HTML element. Then we now have the sender then selector article p, targets any p nested inside an article. Now when you use this pattern, it will target elements. Now we're not looking at nested tags. It will only target elements that, now if you want to target, maybe you created you open an article section and then you want to target only the paragraphs there. You just use article p like this. You will target any p element nested inside the article tag. You can see how it's explained there. Target any p element nested inside the article what tag. Then direct child selector. You see this one, you already on ordered lists, li, when it comes to list, li is the like direct, li is the direct direct child selector of ul, is the direct child of ul, because each time you open an unordered list you must open a list item tag. So target li directly child to ul. That's what it does. Then adjacent sibling, it will target the immediate sibling p following a h2 tag. That's the next, it just targets the next element. So these are just different ways we can select. I know it will be much more easier to understand as soon as we practice, but it's important that we explain all this because a single classwork cannot be enough to actually, test out all of these things. So you can These CSS are not important that you copy, but I'm copying them myself so you can see how the code is. But I want you to take note of something here. Look at the syntax that CSS is using so it can be clear. CSS is making use of what? Name of the selector, that's the selector. You open an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace, you close it, and then you have the property you want to style and the value you are assigning to that property. This is the syntax. Take note of this syntax, because when you are doing your CSS documents, your CSS file, your CSS for various websites you will do, this is the pattern and this is the CSS syntax. And take note also that in CSS, every line ends with a semicolon. Take very good note of that. Every line ends with what? A semicolon. And also take note that between the property and the value you want to assign to that property, there is a semicolon. There's a colon, not a semicolon, I mean, so sorry. There is what? A colon. So what happens here? This is the selector, okay? Like now in this case, this is a class selector, this is a selector, and this is a background. This is a property that is background color, okay? A CSS property, and this is a demarcation, that's a colon, and this is a value I am assigning to this particular CSS what? Property. This is exactly how it works. So take note of this syntax, because we are going to be making, this is how most of our CSS documents are going to be appearing. Now, let's look at, now it is very, now because you must understand, websites and programs must provide what? Information to the end user. And what better way to provide information to the end user except by the use of what? Text. So we're going to be looking at text, fonts, paragraph alignment, and space formatting. Styling text presentation, inline styling spans, paragraph indents, line height, and element what? Borders. This is what we're going to be looking at today, basically. Now, what are we talking about here? Now, we're going to be looking at how do we style text in CSS. Now, like I told you, in the last class, we were able to look at monospace fonts and preformatted text. And if you observe, you'll discover that HTML is quite limited in the level as to the level of formatting and presentation it can give to textual content or any form of content at all. So now, styling text presentation, inline styling spans, paragraph indent, line height, and element what? Borders. So what are we looking at now? Now, this is how, these are different properties and values for styling what? Text. I'm just putting this here. So now we're going to be looking at this. I'm going to be explaining what each of these guys are doing, because this is a very important part. You must know how to use all of this. Now, one of the, you must now already know this is a selector. So now imagine I have maybe a text section in my document, and the text section I have in my document is article hyphen what? Body. It has a class called article hyphen body. Now, what are some of the properties and values I can assign to it in CSS? Number one, font family. Font family. Now, you must understand that every system does not have all the fonts. There are some systems that have more fonts than other systems, but there are certain fonts that are compulsory that you will find in literally almost every system. So whenever you are making use of font family allows you to declare set types of, to declare fonts according to their names that you will need in a particular that the fonts that can be chosen from. Now, what does it do? It works by priority. Now, when your HTML document comes to this point, it will first check whatever you are trying to style. It will check first for Sego UI. If Sego UI is not there, because this is your number one choice, it will start with that priority. It will look for Tahoma and use Tahoma in place, or use Geneva in place if you can't find Tahoma. If you can't find Geneva, it will use Verdana in place, and if you can't find Verdana, it will use Sans Serif in place. And if it can't find any of them, the browser itself will just create a default font, choose a default font for you on that side. So it doesn't mean that the text is not going to appear. As long as the browser is there, the browser will automatically, create a fail-safe of its own. Now, that is for font family. This font family is used to give CSS a number of, a number of font faces or fonts to choose from. Yeah, we already know that fonts influence how a text appears. Then we have what we call the font size. Font size is talking of how big of the size, like of how big, that's the height and the width of a particular font. And font size, and you can now font size, we always use pixel for font size. I don't want to tell you the other ones that we use, the other measurement units that we use. Always use pixel when it comes to font size. Okay, yes, it is always better to always use pixel when it comes to what? Font size. So here we have font size 16 what? Pixel. Then we now have font weight. Font weight is talking about, is this font going to be bold? Is it going to be, how bold is this font going to be bold? Yes, that's font weight. It will be bold. Okay, How bold is it going to be? That way it is beyond font size, it's beyond the level of font size. So you can have a font that is 16 pixel, and with this kind of font weight, it will be so significant because it will be very heavy. Whatever color that it is carrying will be much more heavier, much more influential to the eye, and draw more attention because of that. And it can also go as far as 600. If you take this to 600, yeah, we're not yet fully practicalizing. If you take this to 600, you will see that the text will become much more bigger again. And line height, vertical spacing within paragraph what? Lines. Yes, when you create paragraphs for between paragraph lines, when you create a paragraph in HTML and you write a lot of text, of course, you know some of those texts have to break into the next line. So you use line height to decide the space between the lines. Are you getting me? Between line 1 of a text and line 2 of that same text in the same paragraph. That is exactly what you use line heights for. So vertical spacing within what? Paragraph lines. And of course, color. Color is different from background color. Color is talking about the color of the text or the contents on that page. Background color is talking about the background color. Okay, but color is talking about the color of that text, and you can assign values to it. Of course, you can still type in your normal colors like red, blue, etc. But in programming and in web design, we always advise to make use of what? Hexadecimal color codes. And this is an example of hexadecimal color code because why? It's been recorded that there are roughly about 16 million, over 16 million colors available to a web designer. And I can tell you very well, I've tried it even in my physical classes. And when you tell people to mention 30 colors, people actually get hooked by the time they hit 10 or 15. Some are knowledgeable enough to give you up to 20, but nobody has ever been able to give me up to 30 colors just by mentioning. That's to tell you that we are quite limited in thoughts as to the number of colors we can access. So to help us, I introduced this site called htmlcolorcodes.com. Now, when you come to htmlcolorcodes.com, here you can have access to the hexadecimal color code of various colors. Like now, if I want to use blue, but a particular shade of blue, I'm not so sure. I can choose, I can go like this, as you are going, you are seeing different shades of the same blue. Each of these blues have their names, I know, but then you are just seeing different shades and you make your choice. Okay, I think I want it a bit dark. Okay, I like this. And then you can click this. When you click this, you automatically copy this. Okay, when you click it, you copy. You can see it informs you here that you have copied that hexadecimal color code already, and you can use it in place already. So whenever you are building a website, always have this website handy for you, htmlcolorcodes.com. And htmlcolorcodes.com will allow you to be able to have access to much colors and it will give you their hexadecimal color code. So here is the hexadecimal color code of that particular color that I'm using here. Okay, that's for that. Then we go for the paragraph indentation and horizontal alignment. Very important. So what are we talking about here? Now, this is another way of targeting nested tags, whereby you have a paragraph, and inside the paragraph, there may be another paragraph with a class known as intro-text. Okay, that's where this dot is coming from. Dot intro-text, meaning that under the paragraph tag, look for a class named intro-text, and then we say text-index indents the first line of what? The paragraph. That means, normally in school, when we are writing with our biro, okay, when we're being taught in school how to write, when you give a paragraph, you give a space between your margin, you give a margin. Yeah, it's usually referred to, let's call it a space between the margin and where you start writing the first character, the first word, the first character. That is how it is. But in programming, if you don't give a text indent, paragraph tag itself is not yet smart enough to know that it should give that kind of space. But if you need that kind of space, though we seldom need it, but if in case you need that kind of space, you use the text indent property and assign a value to it. It can be 20 pixel, 30 pixel, 15 pixel, all depends on you and what you are looking for. It is quite important that as you are styling in CSS, you are also viewing in your web browser to ensure that you get the right result. Is that okay? Then we have text-align. Text-align, just like the way I believe many of us who are watching this video have typed documents in MS Word before, whereby you can align text to the center, to the left, to the right, and justify. That's exactly what is happening. Now, if you align to the left, the text will move to the left. When you align to the center, this text will be centralized. Okay. When you align to the right, the text will move to the right. Then justify. Now, many a times I always tell my students the difference between justify and center is very simple. Justify does not just center. When you centralize it, it also ensures that the gap between on the left hand side is equal to the gap on what? The right hand side, which is why Justify, I prefer to use justify than to use center in most of my codes. Then letter spacing, this is talking about characters of the alphabet in your text, what you are programming, and the letter spacing is used to, decide the space that will appear between characters of the alphabet in whatever it is you are programming. Then margin hyphen bottom, we're talking about the space between that text and at the bottom, between that text and the next element. We have margin hyphen top, we have margin hyphen bottom, we have margin hyphen right, and we have margin hyphen left. So you can use them to, manipulate your text and how your text is going to look. Then we have dot highlight is we're looking at an element with a class equal to highlights. There's no special introduction here, but you can see we have background color. Background color is used to, give a color to a particular to the background, that is to the fallback of to the back of course background color is talking about the back color of a particular element. Yes, perfect. And then color is talking about the color of the element of the output of that element itself. And then here you see font weight. Like I told you, font weight must not be 400, it can be 600, it can be 500. Most times you don't always need more than 600. Yes, and you don't need to add pixel, you don't need to add percentage, you don't need to add REM or EM to font weight when you are choosing it. Just type the number, and the HTML parser and CSS parser in your browser will automatically interpret it properly. Then you have padding. Padding is talking about the space from the left and the right, of course, 2 pixels. And the padding here we have, it goes all the way from top, left, right, top, and then bottom. That's exactly how it works. Then border radius. Border radius is talking about a border that is round. When you put a round border around a particular element, okay? Yeah, let's continue. And then we move on to this another class called .colored box. We have a border here. You see here, this is not just border radius now. We have a normal border, and there is an outline for it. We have a border hyphen left hyphen width. That's the left side of the border, and we have a border radius again. We have a padding, we have a margin. But then CSS is something that over time you get to understand better as you practice. Okay, when we enter today's classwork, everything we are doing here will make much more sense by then. Okay, yeah. Selector specificity. Now we're going to be looking at something much more interesting in HTML and CSS. Yeah, selector specificity and pseudo what selectors. That's what we're talking about. These are special selectors that are available in CSS. CSS special selectors, some special selectors that came into usage in CSS3. Now, in the last class, you remember we made use of hover, and I keep repeating. Please go and try and watch the videos of the last class. Yeah, go and try and watch the videos of the last class. When you watch them, you'll be able to follow this class more effectively. We are following a curriculum, and it is where we stop that we continue from today. Yes, so please try and follow the videos of the last class. And we say inline styles. And now basically pseudo class define element states, while pseudo elements allow styling specific structural what fragments. So pseudo classes are in CSS and they define element states. State in the sense like a hover link, like when you click a link, it becomes active. When you view a link, it is a link. You click it, it becomes visited. And when you're on the page, it becomes an active link. And when you put your mouse over the link, those are states. You are responding to various states of a particular HTML element at different times. While pseudo elements, on the other hand, can allow you to break up your document into multiple parts. Are you getting me? That's what pseudo elements do. You break up your document into multiple parts using CSS without actually tampering with your HTML. You break up your document into multiple parts, separated into multiple parts, despite being together, and style each element and style each of these partitions differently. Okay, now we have pseudo classes, but these are examples of pseudo classes. And then if we go down further, we'll see pseudo elements. I'm just putting them on this white place because on this video it may not be so clear to watch it from the manual, to see the manual until when you read the manual directly, but I'm just showing us. And these are pseudo classes. You can see here over. We have done this on the last class, whereby we did something when the link is hovered upon. We have UL student list. We have LI ratio first child. That's when you say first child, you are talking about the first list item in the student list, and then you have font weight equal to bold. You have ul.student list. The student list is the class. Are you getting me? And then the nth child is talking of even. You get my point? That's the even. When we say even, we're talking of it. It counts 2. First child is talking about counting 1. Nth child is talking about counting what? 2. Now these are hardly ever used. You hardly will have to make use of this, but then just have the knowledge, and so that it will help you. Background color, we are still using the same hexadecimal color code that we have been using. Then pseudo elements, you can see how pseudo elements are. Dot quote ratio before, content like this, font size like this. Now you are talking about everything before this particular class called quotes. This is how you want to style them. Everything after clear fixed class, this is how you want to style them. So basically, this is not something to hammer upon, because you are really going to need it. But as I always encourage us as much as possible, I always try to encourage us as much as possible that you should please try to study the manuals. That's why I always attach my manual to the videos, because when the manuals are attached to the video, it becomes easier for you as an individual to follow. By the time you are watching the video and you are practicing from the video and you are also looking at the manual, you see you get a very proper view of what we are trying to achieve. Yes. Now you have the CSS box model, positioning and floating. This is a very important thing in CSS, and we go a long way to help you. Say every HTML element, now this is where we start from. I say every HTML element is rendered as a rectangular box comprising of contents, padding, border and margin. Box sizing, always use box sizing ratio border box across all elements so that width includes padding and border, preventing overflow box. So every single HTML element is rendered as a rectangular what? Box. Yes. Comprising of content. Content is talking about the text in between the tags. The padding, like I said, the space in between that content and the edge, and the content here and the edge. The border is talking about like around that particular content, around that particular content. The margin is talking about that whole content, that's both the tag and the content together. Their space from either the left hand side or the right hand side of the top or the bottom. So box sizing standard, always set box sizing, yeah, like we said, always set box sizing border hyphen box across all elements, so that what will happen, so that width includes padding and border, preventing overflow box. The overflow whereby someone has to scroll to the right and to the left to view your website. That's a very bad user experience. Don't worry, we're going to have a course on user experience, and there's so much more coming your way, and I will encourage us to really make use of it. So this is an example of it using the box model. You can see something now. Using the box model, you see where we use the asterisk. This is the universal. You see where we use the asterisk, right? Where asterisk is selecting all the entire elements of that particular HTML page. With the help of the asterisk, we have selected all the HTML elements on that page. We have asterisk star, comma, asterisk ratio before, comma, asterisk ratio after, and we have automatically using box sizing. I say box hyphen sizing ratio border hyphen what box. Now all elements are now into a form of border box, and then inside here we can now make use of width, and we have padding. Padding is talking of the inside thing, like I told you, the spacing between the content and where the tag started, and margin is talking about the tag and where the tag started and the edge of your screen, whether at the top, at the bottom, or between that particular element and the element before or after it, or beside it, any of them. So you see dot box, we can now have width 300 pixel. We have padding. All these things are we're basically trying to do here is just to explain to you how the box model works. So the whole purpose of the box model, what you just need to grab from here is always declare this at the beginning of your CSS. Every time, always declare this. Okay? And when you declare this, because this way, automatically there will be a padding automatically added, and imagine that you may not need to change or work on throughout the rest of your code. But this is very important that you add each time that you are for every time that you are making use of it. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, now we are coming to our classwork of today, which is very important. Now let us actually put together all of these things that we have done into a very beautiful page, HTML document that we are going to run, and let's see what happens. Now create a feature callout card contain an image floated to the left, a main heading, a paragraph with the first line indented, a highlighted span badge, and an alternate table row styled using nth child even. Okay, now if you open my manual, when you click here, you will see the code. Now first things first, we need to copy. Okay, here you can see that here, of course, because it's the manual, I can't. So we are going to have to, we're going to first copy the CSS. We're going to copy all this CSS code. We can't copy everything together at once here. So we're going to first copy the CSS code and go and put in our styles.css file. Okay, so this is what we're going to actually see. We'll put in our styles.css file. Okay, and then we're going to copy the HTML code. We're going to copy the HTML code and we're going to put it in our index.html file. Okay, let's see. We did start from the body, so everything about it was in the body, so I don't need to delete everything I've done. I just need to, in the body tag, copy that and put here. Okay, Control S. Yes, so when we do that, like I told you, the next thing is launch your XAMPP. So if you click your start, if you're using Windows 11, you type XAMPP. You're going to see this logo icon, XAMPP control panel. Just click it. Sometimes it can take a little time to launch, but just click it and let's wait for it to launch. Okay, yeah. Okay, sometimes my system, don't use my system to judge yourself. For some systems, as soon as you launch it, you can see many instances have already been launched of the XAMPP. As soon as you launch it, it pops up automatically. It's meant to pop up and then you can be able to, still try it a second time. It's going to launch, don't worry, let's just give it some time. This is like my video classes are usually like as if we're having a live class. I don't have time to pause, come back, no time for that. Just let's flow as it is moving. Yes. Okay, refresh. So another faster way to launch it, okay, because sometimes the way Windows is built and most of these operating systems, server softwares usually are very much delayed to launch. Another way I would launch it, which most times will prove to be faster, is to enter my XAMPP folder and you're going to see this place, XAMPP control. If I launch it from here, most times the launching is faster. Okay. This I'm sure. Now, even though you don't need to use XAMPP to run this, are you getting me? It's imperative because what I'm teaching you is so that you can be able to do these things in real life. It's imperative that you use XAMPP to run it. I could have as well just run it directly in my browser. I could have done the same. That way, it will still run. It will still run directly if I launch it that way. But then I want us to use XAMPP so that we can actually be able to appreciate all we got to install on our system. So I just have to keep refreshing. It's only a matter of time. The XAMPP is going to pop up. Okay, let's not just kill our time while that is trying to run. Let's just go to our htdocs since we haven't done any server-side code. Of course, I'm very sure in the next class we'll be able to just launch the index file and you can see it. Okay, our example has finally run. So you see, it has run so many instances. This is the thing about impatient. We live in a world where people are getting more and more patient with everything about computers, because computers have proven that they are very fast. So people expect that fastness at every point in time. So what you need to do is you click start. So when you do that, just come to your browser. Just come to your browser and then do localhost slash class 2. As soon as you have your XAMPP running like this, localhost slash what? Class 2. Now this is exactly, let's refresh. This is just a simple thing that we have just done in CSS. Okay, yeah, let's see something. We view our page source. Let's click here. Okay, yeah, it needs an image. So for you to appreciate it more, we're going to get an image. Let me grab an image from somewhere in my system. Let's grab this image. Okay, let's just grab this image. Let's grab that image and then we'll go to our XAMPP. Remember how we structured our folder, that we have a folder called images. So open here, htdocs class 2, and we'll click on images. And then yeah, I like simple names. So it's a JPG image, is land.jpg. So we go here and then we'll come images slash land.jpg. You can see where the image is referenced here. Okay, and then let us see what we are going to get now. Okay. Okay, I made a mistake in my spelling. Is land. Okay, land.jpg, and that is for that. And perfect. Now this is, you see, this is just a simple design that we just created. Now this is very nice for a user profile, like you want to talk about it. And now what did we do here? How did all this magic just happen? It's not just about copying and pasting. Of course, we did our HTML normally, doc type HTML. We created our HTML and the head section. We have our width equal to our meta name equal to viewport, content equal to width equal to device hyphen width, and all of that. We have the, now remember that we linked our style sheets here. Good. Yeah, sometimes I always encourage that you add this. Okay, always add this at the end so that you can close the tag properly. The link tag is one of these standalone tags in HTML. Remember in the last class we talked about container tags and standalone tags. Okay, now we go to the body where we really have business, and then the first thing we do is that we open a div. We open a div class like this. You can see, and inside this div we have the various elements there. Now inside the div we have class. The name of this div is feature hyphen what card. Take note of this, class equal to, sorry, equal to feature hyphen what card. Then we added an image here, img src equal to images slash land.jpg, alt equal to out. This alt means alternate text. Now in case you find yourself in a browser that doesn't support images, yes, like maybe someone that turned off images in their browser, you find yourself there, this is going to appear in replacement of that image. Or if the browser can't find your image, if you observe when my image was not loading initially due to my wrong spelling, you will see the word profile appear there. Then you have a class, you create a class. Say I created this particular image now has a class called card hyphen what img. Yes, it has a, we created a class already because we're going to use it to style. Now when I have h3 senior ICT instructor. Now remember I told you something about span. I say span is used when you want to put text side by side. So we want this pro to be side by side here, but we want it different. So we have class equal to what? Badge. Pro, but it's going to be, you see how it will appear to be there. Then yeah, now we now have p class equal to card-desc, that's descendants, and welcome to the, we say welcome to the CSS3. That's where we wrote some. This p is the paragraph tag, and we have it opened and we have it closed there, but also we added a class there. We say welcome to CSS3 Professional Lecture Series, Master Full Stack Application, and all of that. Now, I personally, I don't like having more space. When I don't have more to add, I don't like having. Then there is div class equal to what? Clear fix. Now, this is the HTML. What did we do in the CSS? First things first. First things first, we start the feature card, which is the div that carries everything. And we say dot feature card. Number one, the width is what? 100 what? Percent. Now we did it 100%, and we say the maximum width in size. That's to tell you, no matter how it grows, it should not grow beyond this size. So if you say width 100%, it's going to take the whole width of the current viewport. If it's on a phone, it will take from left to right completely. If it's on a big screen, it will take from left to right completely. But now with the help of max width, we are saying that no matter how it tries to grow, let it not grow beyond 450 pixel, because of what we are trying to achieve. It should not grow beyond 450 pixel. We have a padding, which is talking of the space in the inner spacing of the content from the edges. Okay, yeah. Then we have a border. Now look at what padding is doing for us here. Padding is talking about the inner space, like between this tag and this tag. This is an example of what? Padding. Yes. So we have the padding 20 pixel, and then we have border 1 pixel solid. This, now you can see this, there is a border. We have a kind of border around. If you look closely, there's a border around this particular feature card. So let us just go here. If I wanted to make it more significant, let's try and use something like red and see what will happen. So I copied the red color code. Let us replace this color here, 1 pixel solid. Let's replace it with something that is a bit brighter. Maybe it will be easier for us, some of us, to understand. Well, yeah, now you can see the border here. The border is a line around that particular. It's like an outline of that particular HTML element. Okay. Then you gave it. We have border hyphen radius. With the help of border radius, we are able to achieve this rounded. These rounded corners that you're seeing. If I should remove the border radius, you're going to see something. And let's use a comment. Okay. Let's use a comment and come down here. Yeah, I've made the border radius not efficient, not available. And when you do it, you can see those rounded corners can no longer be found there. Okay, yeah, you can't find the rounded corners there again. But if we remove this, if we make the border radius active again, automatically the rounded corners are going to what? Appear. Yes, if you do this, you can see the rounded corners, and this looks very smart. Okay, yeah, very, very smart. And then background, the background color for this particular class, for this particular div, is white, FFFF. Yeah, this is the hexadecimal color code for white. So we have done that. And now never you forget that the class we just started here, dot feature card, is what? Is feature card. You can see the div that carries every other element in this particular HTML document. Okay, let's proceed. We have .card-img. Okay, you can see it. Now we're now moving to another class. That's the image class. You can see the image here. We have a class called card-img. So we're now moving to that particular class. That's where we want to work on, what we want to look at now. And then we have first float ratio left. We are telling it move this to the left. Are we together? Move this to what? The left. That's the purpose of that. If you don't do that, it may just stay anyhow. But with the help of move this, we are just saying float ratio left is saying move this to what? To the left hand side. So it's going to move that particular. It's going to move. That's why this image is located at the what? Left hand side of this div. So that's what float does. So in float, it could be left, it could be right. It can only be left or right. It can't be beyond that. Then you have width. The width of the of that particular image, we say it should not be more than 80 pixel, and the height should not be more than 80 pixel. But you will not notice this because of the fact that we have it in a circle. Okay, yeah, but normally profile pictures in most websites that you go to appear in circles. Then with the help of border radius, now if I should do this, let's just affect it a little. Let's do 30%. You will see that our circle will not be so amazing anymore. You see how it appears now. When I do 30%, you can see how it appears. It doesn't appear like a circle. This is also looking good. It's quite unique also. You know, that's why it's good that you learn this code so that you can easily be able to come up with your own very beautiful and unique designs. So, but let's leave it as 50%. Okay, I just did that to show you what that particular border hyphen radius is in. So with the help of border hyphen radius, you can shape elements to circle, to, you know, with the help of rounded edges, you can produce a lot of amazing and dynamic shapes. Okay, then we have margin hyphen right 15 pixel. You know, we're talking about the margin between here and here. That's the margin between this image and and this other element. We are saying it should be what? 15 pixel. That is for that. So margin is external, padding is what? Internal. Good. Perfect. Okay. Then we now have, the next class we're looking at is what? Dot card hyphen what? Description. And you can see that we have it here. We have here we have in the paragraph here, we have p class equal to card hyphen what? DESC. You can see that here, right? Yeah, DESC. This is what we're styling next. We're using classes here. Text hyphen indent, we say 15 pixel. Now you can see what's happening here. You can see a paragraph, a clear paragraph being shown here. If I should make this, let's make the text hyphen indent maybe 50 pixel. Let us see what we're going to get. You see more gap is being given. So that's just the whole purpose of the text hyphen index. So let's just use 15 pixel that we used initially. Yeah, and you can, yeah, we use that and it works perfectly well. So that's it. Now becomes like how we were taught in school to make paragraphs, whereby you write something and you have to give a space between the line and that part and the beginning of your write-up. Then line height is talking about the height. Is talking about the height between these paragraphs. So now for this paragraph lines, so let's say I make this 1.9, you will notice a very significant difference. Okay, it was 1.6 before. Let's make it 1.9. You see it gives more space between them. That's like the vertical spacing between the lines. So let's take it back to 1.6, and then text hyphen align equal to what? Justify. Yes, here we are justifying the text, but you will not notice because of this. But if it was a situation whereby we didn't have this image here or any of that, it will just, this text will properly what? Justified. Yes. Now remember, we have a span class. We have a span class here where we say history senior ICT instructor, span class equal to badge. So like I told you, I say when you use span when you want elements, something to appear by the side. Now you can see now that text pro has appeared here by what? By the side. Yes, pro has appeared by the side because we use the span. So you come to our CSS here and see what did we do there. We just gave it a background color, gave the text color white, gave the font 0.75 REM, gave a padding, internal padding within that particular badge. We have a border radius here. The border radius, of course, you already know what the border radius is doing. It is giving us this round beautiful effect that we are seeing over here. And vertical align, we aligned it vertically to be centralized and at the middle, and that's how we got this particular thing that you see here, this pro that you see in this place. Perfect. And then we have our clear fix content equal to null. That means there's nothing there. Display ratio table and clear ratio both. So basically what we have just done here is that we just did a simple classwork that we're able to make use of what we have learned in HTML and in CSS to be able to produce a very simple profile view for a website. So I advise you that you take your time, listen to this lecture over and over again. I touched so many things here. I know it's quite longer than our usual classes, but I promise you our consequent classes will not be more than 30 minutes long, okay? And I promise you it won't be more than, and I believe that you will enjoy today's class. See you when I come back for the next section. Thank you and bye.